go. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. And I will get going live. I guess take it from here.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. And we have a new guest on our show. So I'll speak to you later. Thank you. And stay blessed. Spread a lot of love. Stay united. And namaste. And blessings to your family and friends. And we'll connect soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See ya.
So, hi, Marc. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
All good, all good. So, how's the quarantine things going around?
Things are going all right here in Durham, North Carolina. I was actually on a previous call, and I was telling that person we had a severe rainstorm that was last night. They were saying that it would be a little windy, a little rainy, but nothing that we couldn't handle, and definitely probably is needed for the plants and things of that nature. But definitely things are going well. Of course, I heard a little bit of your past guest, and Durham is in the same situation. We're in, and the rest of North Carolina. We're in lockdown as well, even though certain cities, I believe, are getting ready to lift their restrictions. Charlotte, which is one of our big cities, I think they're lifting theirs this week. The governor here in North Carolina has already said that he's going to extend things until May 8th. Now, what happens after May 8th, that's still up in the air. I've heard some people speculating that we could have a lift here by May 15th or things of that nature. But what I know of Governor Cooper, who is the governor here in North Carolina, I'm actually thinking it'll probably be the end of May or early June before we have a full lift, and I'm not even sure that will happen then. I know that our mayor, who's actually a family friend, Steve Schul, I don't think he was actually one of the ones that put the stay-at-home order even before the governor did. So I'm not expecting him to do it till he's really seeing some figures and some things that folks will be safe and things of that nature. So we're trying to flatten the curve here, just like the rest of the world is trying to flatten the curve. We do have people that have gone out and got their mask. My aunt actually sent me 2 masks that she made, handmade mask, and I've seen a number of people that are wearing the mask, whether it's the more complicated, more medical type. I believe they're called I9s or something like that. So I've seen people with those kind of masks, and then I've also seen people with like what I've got, the homemade mask. But as you get out and about, you do see more and more people wearing masks. I'm not going to lie about it. There are people in North Carolina that are walking around not wearing a mask at all, not really being concerned about it. And it's across the board. It's not just young people. It's folks that I've seen. Definitely, I've seen some of the young folks that I live near the Duke University campus. So I've seen some of the young people not have masks on. I've also seen some folks that are in my age range, and I'm late 50s. And I would even argue my dad's age, and he's going to turn 80 in June. My mom will turn 78. So I've seen people in those kind of age ranges across the spectrum, even younger folks, like teenagers and folks that are not wearing them. But more and more, I'm seeing people wear the mask, definitely trying to do the hand washing and all the other things that the CDC is recommending that you do and things along that line. So we're seeing that happening here, just like the gentleman was saying, in Texas. So definitely folks are trying to maintain. I do think, and I can say for myself, as well as friends of mine, the longer the lockdown goes, the more people are getting antsy, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. So, Marc, before we start, our viewers are complaining that why I didn't introduce you officially to our viewers. So we start with Namaste, and that's how we greet to our audience around the world. And we'll start with what do you do, where are you from, and how are you maintaining your health right now?
Okay. Let me just tell you, since your podcast is Thursday, I'll start with a little bit of the podcasting background, and then I'll tell them a little bit about some of the other things that I'm involved with. My name is Marc Lee. I actually have a podcast that is called Straight Talk with Dean and Marc. It's me and my good buddy, J.W. Piercy, but he goes by the stage name of Dean Geronimo. And we do that every Monday night between the hours of 7 and 9 p.m. We focus on some things that are very important to me, that being the creative world as well as the activist world. My dad was an activist, as I would even argue my mom as well. And then we also concentrate on entrepreneurs and educators, and those are kind of our primary 4 focuses. But in addition to that, just because of what's going on in the world, we have started adding health as a 5th element, you might say. But the primary focus that folks might be interested in is that we are definitely into creatives, entrepreneurs, educators, and activists. Like I said, my dad was involved in the civil rights struggle in the 60s, and is still living and is an educator himself, having taught at UNC and having done some other education endeavors as well. As a matter of fact, through UNC, he even taught in Eritrea over there in Africa and everything. So definitely that's kind of my background in the world of podcasting. In terms of radio, I started as a preteen. My folks started a radio station when I was a teenager. They were very much, well, a preteen, I should say. They were listening for jazz and not finding traditional jazz. So they wanted to start their own radio station to reach a part of the target audience that wasn't out there, unfortunately. So they were not finding the jazz that they wanted to hear on the radio, so they created their own, and neither one of them had a radio background. So they did that, and I learned with them. So definitely from the age of being a preteen on up to my 20s, I went to college at Marc University in Milwaukee. Definitely did a lot of radio and still continue to do radio, not just the podcasting, but I also do a blues show on WCOM, which is a low power radio station in Carrboro. So definitely have been involved in radio, and also was one of the people involved in the initial founding of WNCU, which is a radio station on Central's campus. So definitely have some deep connections to the world of radio, but not just the world of radio. I've also been involved at the Hayti Heritage Center, which is an African American cultural arts center in Durham. So I have a lot of ties to the event and the cultural world here in Durham. I used to work for the Durham Arts Council. I'm on the board of the Carolina Theater, and I've done a lot of other things revolving around entertainment and events in particular. So we have a lot of great festivals here, like the Festival of the Eno, Centerfest, the Bull Durham Blues Festival, and things of that nature. So I've been involved in a lot of the planning aspect of those festivals, and have been involved with that for a number of years. And then on the education side, there's a testing company called Measurement Incorporated, and I'm one of the readers and in some cases team leaders for that particular company. So I've also had some background in education as well. And I've done some activism myself also. I was one of the people involved in Occupy Durham. Many people remember the Occupy movement, but I was involved in Occupy Durham, and I was involved in some other civil rights organizations, including being on the board of the Solidarity Center. So definitely have been involved in activism and things along those lines. So that's a little bit about me. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So it was too much of information, and I think viewers think that you have a multi-talented life, and you have done a lot of things. So how you transform yourself from when you do the radio thing and now the podcast? What is the technology and what kind of change you believe in both the technologies?
If I heard you correctly, you were asking about the change and everything. Part of what happened with the podcast, and I'll just give you a little bit of the story of the podcast, was a good friend of mine started the podcast initially. It was actually called The Voice of the People with Ty Jones, and she reached out to both me and Dean and wanted us to be on her podcast. That being said, we then decided to life happened, life events. She got married, moved to Hawaii, and kind of like dropped the podcast. But me and Dean were having a conversation, and we were like, well, let's keep it going. I mean, we might have to change the name. Of course, we'll have to take over the fiscal responsibility of the podcast and things of that nature. So we did that. We took over the payment to the different services. So like we took over the payment for Blog Talk Radio because it's on Blog Talk Radio. We wanted to get on other platforms. So we got on Spreaker, which then puts us out on different networks like iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Podbean, and things of that nature. So we got that going. I had that conversation with him, and that has grown our base to some degree. So we were glad to do that. So after we got that going and everything, we then kept it running and have been running it now for about 5 years. So Dean does most of the producing. I mean, he will jump in on the conversation, and we start with both me and Dean talking at the beginning, and he will jump in the conversation at some point or another. And then I do the bulk of the interviews, and we will do interviews. Usually it can be as few as one, as many as 4 or 5 in an episode, because it's a 2-hour podcast. But and sometimes it becomes more of like a roundtable discussion. So we have definitely done that and have enjoyed doing that with the podcast and everything. So that's kind of like where that was at. And then in terms of radio, it's definitely a different world. I mean, podcasting has opened up the world, because whether it's Dean using his laptop or me using my laptop and us having those studios that Blog Talk provides. I know some people prefer Anchor, but we've used Blog Talk, and Blog Talk has worked for us and everything. or whether it's one of the other platforms, you can do it pretty much off of your laptop, a decent mic, headset, things of that nature. So definitely, it's been a good journey for us. It's different than a regular radio station. I mean, I do still go into a regular radio station. I don't go to Central or any of the others, but I go into, we don't do it anymore because that was one of the lockdowns. So actually, this will be my first one after several weeks of having gone in of the live studio, because we did decide to play it safe and be conscious of what's going on around the world with the virus and everything. So we've actually closed the studio down in Carlborough, which is a town not that far from Durham. It's on the other side of Chapel Hill, and many folks that follow basketball know Chapel Hill and UNC and Michael Jordan and all of that, but and some of the more recent players. But that being said, we will not go anymore to the physical studio. So I'm actually using WavePad and some other programming to record my program. So I did that. I had to get it in by 10 last night, which I did, and it will air tonight between the hours of 4 and 6. But for a while there, I was one of the stubborn people that was still going into the studio, did carry my mask with me, and did try to do some other things to keep the place safe and sanitized and all of that. But as an executive decision, and I am on that board, we just decided that we would wait for this pandemic to ride out, try to stay safe, try to stay healthy, and not create any kind of environment that might go against that. So, like I said, the station is pretty much closed except for like some very serious emergencies, and I can't even think of what those would be. And we're encouraging all of our folks to do their programming from remotely. And if they can't do it, then we're trying to find ways to help them make that happen.
Really? Okay. So sorry, I'm late to the party here. What is your? So I have to ask the basic questions because I'm late to the party. What is your program about? What do you talk about on your podcast?
Oh, no problem. I see that you've joined me, Nicholas.
Yeah, right.
Glad to have you. Glad to be talking to you as well. The podcast, if I was to say what our 5 focuses were, and I was talking to the other hosts as well about that, but it's an African-American based podcast, but our guests are not all African-American because we've had a variety of folks, but it's 5 core areas that we talk about. And a lot of them are based on my own circle of what I'm involved in. And I would even argue what Dean's involved in as well, because Dean is a member of his local NAACP. He's also been involved in some other organizations and things of that nature. And Dean is in New Jersey, in like the Plainfield, New Jersey kind of area and everything. I'm here in Durham, North Carolina. But because of my own life and everything, the podcast covers creatives. I have a number of friends that are in the creative field, everything from spoken word artists to neo soul and even folk singers. So that's what I meant when I said that even though we're African American, our guests are not all African American. Sure. And I've got a good author friend, Elizabeth Hine, who wrote a couple of books that were based on her health issues, and she's a European American. So definitely we try to cover the creative side of what's going on. We also have a number of guests that are activists, because both of my own background has some activism roots, as does my dad's roots, as does my mom's and some other family members. So there are a number of activists here in the community. Anybody that knows anything about Durham and North Carolina knows that we have rich activism history, everything from environmental justice to race relations to other things of that nature. So I've got friends in that community. So some of our guests are activists, and that's always been a passion of mine. More recently, I've had a number of friends that have started like startups and things of that nature. So we have had some entrepreneurs that have been on the show, because entrepreneurship is something that I've always been interested in. And then we have educators. My mom was a guidance counselor when I was a little kid, and her sisters were involved in education. One late sister who just passed away not that long ago, about a couple of years ago, was a principal and a teacher. She did the principal work, I believe, was when she had, well, no, I believe the principal work was in New Jersey, but she's taught in both New Jersey, Virginia, and other parts before she passed. I have another aunt that has been an educator in the school system, and another one that is a medical librarian. And then some of their kids have gone on into education as well. So definitely have been involved with a number of folks in that category. So I would say that those are our 4 primary things that we're involved in. But in addition to that, we also, because of what's going on in the world, we've added a health aspect. So I have had a couple of doctors and a couple of medical people that have talked about COVID-19 and what's just happening in the world, because, I mean, it's what's going on. And of course, we want to keep our listeners and folks informed about that as well. So that's been the 5th element, not something that is our usual forte, and I would definitely say that of the five, it's the one that I probably have the least expertise in or the least background in. So I do more listening when they talk than I do on some of the other ones. But all of them, I do a lot of listening because I think that's the key to a good interview.
Absolutely correct. And the thing is, we actually do startups on Wednesday, and we're doing startups on Saturday. So we have 2 days for the startups, and then we do the podcasters on Thursday, and we do the doctors on Friday. So we do have a little bit of a schedule that's very similar to yours, and we beam all over the world. So Ankit is actually in New Delhi, and Willie Hill is actually in Australia, who joined us from Australia. Well, this Sunday we have Alexander May from South Africa. She puts on a show from South Africa. So we actually have shows that go on all over the world. So it's kind of a very interesting group that we discuss. But here's the more interesting thing about the group. Okay, you're in Caribou or Caribaro or whatever that is, right?
No, I'm sorry. I currently am in Durham, North Carolina, but the radio station that I mentioned is in Carborough. So the Carborough is the town that's just outside of Chapel Hill. But my current base and where I'm based at is Durham, North Carolina. As a matter of fact, I know I'm literally around the corner from Duke University.
Oh, I know that very well. If you're close to Duke University, you're near. I think there's Cornwallis Drive there.
Yes.
Around there. Colony Park is close by, right?
Yes.
And the Wa Duke. If you ever go to the Washington Duke Inn.
Yes, I've gone to events at the Wa Duke.
Great food at the Washington Inn too. So not that I know a little bit about it, but I know a little about everything. So, and I've been almost everywhere. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, the thing is the podcasters. This is our first attempt at the podcasters and bringing podcasters on to IBM TV. We made a executive decision. We have an international board of people from Costa Rica, Nicaragua, India, obviously, and also from the United States, Nepal, et cetera. And we said, hey, we'll bring podcasters on. So I was going, where do you find podcasters? Well, they have those Facebook groups. So I put in Facebook group. First thing I get is scam. And I'm going like, what are you? Oh, I'm like, thank you for the warm welcome, guy. I mean, what are you talking about? It's not a scam. But the thing is, someone went a little crazy on us. Thank you for showing up and not being crazy on us. But the thing is, it was kind of an interesting experiment. But we do plan on continuing having podcasters on our Thursday show because we want to know a little bit more about that. We tend to serve what I call underserved communities in media.
Right.
And the original company that we have that owns IBM TV is called Money Masters PBS, which is a not-for-profit company organized under the laws of the state of North Carolina. Okay, so the thing is, we actually have a very big presence in your great state of North Carolina, and of IBM also has a very great presence in the great state of North Carolina. It's pretty interesting. So we kind of got our start with that. So the thing is, I said, well, we want to bring podcasters because we bring a lot of chess players. We have a chess show that goes on, so you'll see a lot of chess is an underserved community. Right. We realize the podcasters. We do startups because they're an underserved community, but there's a lot of communities out there that and I learned this by working with PBS for about 3 years, that if you said, hey, I want to get my show on PBS, good luck. What century is that going to take place? What century? Seriously, because the way PBS I'm talking about, the people in the United States know about. When I go internationally, they go, what's PBS? They don't even know who they are. But basically, it's very fragmented. In other words, you have your local PBS in North Carolina, and then you have the national. You have to get on, if you want to be a national show, you got to get on what they call this. They had some weird name for it that no one could possibly get on unless you're BBC being rebroadcast. I'm not kidding. So it was like you might as well beat your head against the wall. So we went to NAPTE, and a lot of people don't even know what NAPTE is. And a lot of people in the media industry don't know NAPTE. NAPTE is the National Association of Professional Television Executives. They meet twice a year, once in Miami, once in Budapest. I was going to go to the Budapest meeting this year because I went to the Miami meeting, and I used to live in Miami, so I'm not that interested. I go to Miami a lot, so I want to go to Budapest. Okay. But and we met with Paul Franklin, who's the head of CBS, president of CBS Distribution. To get on CBS primetime, you're a year or two out at best on any show that you have at best. And then you get booted out like that. Bang. And so the thing is, I was going, man, talk about, and we went to, what was it? I think it was Facebook or YouTube. One of them was launching something, whatever. And we said, well, we're with IBM. Do you have an appointment? No. Oh, we're not even bothering to meet with you. They slammed the door in your face. I don't know if you had that experience, but let me tell you something. You're in media. Okay.
I've had the experience.
The door gets slammed in your face before ever. And I said, and Kim, who's not here because she's helping somebody in court, but she's here. She's in the broadcast studio. She'll join later, hopefully. Saying, well, why don't you do your own network? I said, Kim, this is going to be really expensive, because we were showing on a local network called Biz TV, 40 stations across the country. And I know the owner and what he had to do to get those 40 stations organized, how expensive it is to put all the cameras in. I said, that's not going to happen. And then all of a sudden, well, the technology changed, and IBM TV launched April 15th last year. So I was going like, whoa. But what we were doing is we were doing programming. We're using our old programs. And then what we did is we also took programs and then we would put them on. In other words, they were not live. And we had in our business plan, we'd like to do live. This is a live show with a 3-second delay. Ankit has to call the 3 seconds, because I don't even know how you do that. Okay. The thing is, I was going, wow, the technology's changed. You can do live streaming. So I was in Italy back in October to meet some of our people in Italy that we're working with, and I tested it out, and I said, wow, this streams into Italy. Then of course, our people in Nepal, we had them on. They were the first people in Nepal that were on. Then I realized, hey, we stream all over the world. What's our reach? Reach is 4.3 billion people. Okay, I'm going, that is one heck of a reach, which if you were to do it station by station, it's impossible. Okay, right. If you do it through the internet, you reach 4.3 billion people, but that's the reach. Does that mean 4.3 billion people tune in? No. Why not? They don't even know about it. So that's where you engage in this marketing and distribution plan, because I go, well, we could get there, but getting there is a little, it's like a bit of a cycle. And then when it comes to podcasters, I was trying to tell the podcasters, why are we interested in podcasters? Well, first of all, they're good on television. I mean, they should be good on television, because what do you do as a podcaster? Do you guys talk?
Yep.
you talk and you interview people, right?
All day long.
Okay, right. Now the thing is, what's the great leap from pod to pod TV? Like what we're doing. It's not a great leap, is it?
Not a great leap at all.
Not a great leap at all. But for a lot of other people, it actually is a great leap. In other words, if you've never done interviews, you've never done podcasting, in other words, if you haven't done a lot of this, it's a great leap. They're going like, how do we do all this stuff? So with podcasters, I was told our board, I said, well, why don't we get the podcasters in and integrate them into IBM TV under Pod TV? It's not a great leap for them as it is for a lot of other people, because really, we had people on the art channel and the chess channel for them to do pod work. It's going to be tough to interview people, because you know what it is. You interview a lot of people, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do these people just knock on your door, or do you have to go out and find them?
I have to go out and find the people that I interview. It's actually, I have to spend a lot of time doing the research, looking for them. And I've got a couple of tools of looking for them. Like I said, there's the folks that are in my own community that I'm able to reach to, because they're part of the Rolodex that I have, and folks that are in the 4 target areas that I mentioned that are friends and acquaintances of mine, but are also doing things on a national level. So I'm able to reach out to them. But then I've also got friends that are involved in marketing kind of things and schemes and things of that nature. So they will reach out to me with clients of theirs. There might be, and there are even folks that I don't know. There was a young lady from Boston that reached out to me yesterday, and she's got some entrepreneurs that she handles. So she wanted to get those entrepreneurs, of course, on the show. There was another lady that had some authors and other folks that has reached out to me. There's one certain person that sends me letters pretty regularly, because she's got some political types that are interested in being on the show, and actually had, I think, 1, maybe 2 of her folks on. One of the folks I had was actually something that was totally out of what we usually do. But I said, like you're doing with the podcasters, I thought I'd give it a try. But I'm not one that necessarily has a lot of pop cultural kind of folks on the show. But she wanted to see how her medium was going to do. So I went ahead and had the medium on the show and tried to talk to her. And it was an interesting interview, because it's not something that's necessarily something that I might have some beliefs that are similar, but there's also some things that we don't do the same. So that was an interesting interview and everything. curious to hear more about this Pod TV because that's very interesting to both me and I'm sure Dean will be interested as well. But one of the things I was going to share with you really quickly just is I can relate to the local stories you've told about local PBS because my mom was actually one of the early folks of Black Issues Forum here in North Carolina. She was one of the early hosts. She actually ran a trust fund until she retired some 12 years ago or so, Valeria Lee. But that's my mother. She ran the Golden Leaf Foundation, but she was one of the early folks of the show Black Issues Forum. And of course, that's done locally. It's done on the local one. I know some of the folks that are actually the hosts now because I am a member of NABJ Triangle. It used to be TABJ, but now it's the National Association of Black Journalists Triangle chapter. So I'm a member of that. So I've got a number of friends that are on television, on radio, are PR folks and folks of that nature through that organization. So I can relate having friends both currently in the PBS landscape, more on the local level, as well as having that personal family background. And I actually worked for that local station for a minute. Mom realized I was between some work environments. I might have been when I was in my 30s, I believe. And she was like, well, I can get you some work in our marketing department. So I worked in the marketing department of the local PBS for a hot second.
How long have you been doing podcasting?
The podcast I've been doing, I think I was sharing that story with your co-host, but I've been doing that for about 6 years total. So it's fairly new, but radio is not new. I've been doing radio since I'm 57. I'll be 58 in July, and I've been doing radio since I was a preteen. I think my first time going on a radio station, I was probably either 13 or 14, and have been doing it ever since in one form or fashion. Pretty much during that time, there might have been a year or two of downtime, but pretty much ever since 14 to 58. So just that 44 years or 40 plus years of having some sort of radio background has been involved in the field and everything. But the podcast was actually started by a friend of mine who wanted to share her entertainment knowledge and things of that nature. She got married, moved away from the podcast. Me and Dean decided to keep the podcast running. So we've been running it as our own entity for about five and a half years. But the whole podcast has been going on for about 6.
Wow. Okay. So you've been doing it for quite some time because a lot of podcasters are new and they say something like 3,000 new ones a week come up. But, you know, when you're new at anything, see, when you make the 5-year mark, you're in for good. Okay. The thing is, the ones that are just starting, I go, well, because we've had some of them, I go, well, you're just starting. I said, look, you know, this is going to be a long haul for you. What is the size of your audience right now in terms of your reach?
That's the one thing that, and I was listening to what you were saying, even about your network and the billions and everything.
Right.
We actually do interesting things differently because I would like to have more of the downloads and some of those platforms. And I think certain platforms are better at that than others in terms of monitoring them and being able to tell you exactly what your reach is. The one thing that Blog Talk Radio did that we were really glad that they did it, and we actually intentionally went after certain states, and I'll explain how we did that. But they for a while they monitored how many states you were in and also how many countries you were in. So the last time we checked, we were in all 50 states. They stopped doing that, Blog Talk did, unfortunately, and we were in 73 countries. But and there was some intentionality to what was going on because, like I said, I've got some friends throughout the country. I've got friends in the entertainment industry in Los Angeles. I've got some friends in Texas, definitely New York. I believe I got some friends down there in Florida, and used to go every year down to the National Black, to the ABFF, the American Black Film Festival in the South Beach area. So I went down there for about 4 or 5 years until me and my buddy stopped going down there. But we every year say we're going back. It's just that usually schedules get in the way and we haven't been back. But there are states that I have never been to. Don't know that I will ever get to. I mean, and just like I was telling somebody not that long ago, I definitely need to do more world travel since I've only done maybe 2 out of the country trips in my whole life and everything. But there are even states that I've not been to. Idaho being one of them, Montana being another, South Dakota. But, you know, the wonders of the internet is that if you feel that you're missing that, you could do some research and you could try to find out people that might have interest or ties to that. And that's what I did with Idaho. I didn't know anybody from Idaho, but I looked on Instagram and I looked on Facebook. There was a young lady running what she called the Idaho bucket list, which is basically her reasons that people should come to Idaho. And she teasingly told us, you know, yes, I'll come on your show. I'm not sure I want too many people to be following us in Idaho because part of the reason we like Idaho is because it's quiet and remote. So So, but I will come on the show and share some of the highlights of Idaho, and it's not just the potatoes, but some of the outlets and some of the historical and nature things that they have that are part of what they are about. So I brought her onto the show, and there was a couple of other places that I did not know any of those regions, but I intentionally went after those by, like I said, going on social media and among my circle of friends and finding ways to do that. As a matter of fact, the show she was on, I also had Kobe Watkins, who I've known Kobe for a while. He's a jazz musician. But what I did not realize until I was doing my research about the show was that he had actually taught in that same kind of general area. So, there's kind of that area of the country, Idaho, Iowa, that kind of middle part of the country. And he had some involvement in some of that. So they were able to have some dialogue about some commonality that they had and everything. So that made the show a very interesting show. But no, there are parts of the world, and definitely parts of the United States and vast parts of the world that I would like to get to before the end date. And I jokingly tell folks that I'm trying to stick around in the world for a long time. I have jokingly told friends of mine, if I can make it and be healthy, I'll even go for the 200 mark.
Really? Yeah. Well, I mean, I was just running some math, and I was going, with broadcast hours, you have in a week of 148 broadcast hours. If you had every podcast that had 10,000 followers, you have 1.4 million people watching the network at any point in time. So
Right.
Just running the math, I'm going, just get the podcasters together. But then I noticed that it's kind of hard to do that when the minute you show up to a podcast Facebook, they go scam, and they don't even look at what you're doing. They're just going, they're at what I call adverse already to begin with. But still, that's not going to deter what our goals are in terms of serving the podcast community and maybe integrating podcasting on IBM TV. So that if they're doing podcasting, you have a worldwide audience, but it's a little different because it's not just your voice, it's your voice, and also people can see you, or they can see other people, such as Kim, who just joined us.
Right?
I
see that Kim joined us.
Yeah, she just got out of court, so I don't know what happened there, but not for us.
I was just there as a witness. I wasn't. It had nothing to do with me, but I was interested in online court.
Yes.
Because of COVID, they've moved to online court, and so they allow me to kind of participate and watch from afar, very, very far. But interesting. I will say I don't know that it's adequate for real victims.
Yeah, I can see that not being adequate at all. I actually had a comment to what the other gentleman was saying and everything, but yeah, I know here our courts are actually, we have a very liberal judge, and I actually consider myself liberal and progressive as well, but they pretty much stopped all court activities here in Durham, North Carolina. They're not doing any trials at all. I mean,
you're in Durham. I'm in Raleigh.
Okay, good.
No, they did. They're doing court. They fired up court in Raleigh. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you were in Raleigh, but yeah, you're just around the corner from me and everything. One of the things you were saying, Nicholas, that was really interesting is we've actually been doing that in terms of trying to create somewhat of a network. Because one of the things that happened was, of course, I have a friend, Louis Laporte, who has Skyhawk Radio. So he approached us about being on his radio network. So we're one of the shows that he's airing on his radio network. But then at the same time, you were talking about those hours, and even when you get a platform like Blog Talk Radio and the Straight Talk with Dean and Marc, if you've got an unlimited plan, that means that you are able to do other interviews and do other programming. So Dean has a show that he's part of called Let's Talk About It, which is a roundtable discussion, and then he also had some friends that had a cooking show. So he actually asked them if they would be interested in being part of what we can now call the Level Radio Network. So he brought them onto the show, and then we've done some special interviews. And then I have two friends, Jess Everhart, who a lot of people know here in the area. You may know her, Kim, because she's done a lot of work here, and she's got the Just podcast, which deals with activism and Re-City and things of that nature. So I reached out to her and said, well, can we re-air you on our platform? She was like, sure, I'd love that. It gives me a little bit more of a reach. It helps both of us. And the same thing with Omasadi. And you talk about underserved markets. She is in her early 50s, but that being said, she's going through that period of the time that women go through when they're in that age. But she was, as an African-American woman, not feeling that all of those voices were being heard as they were going through menopause and things of that nature. So she created the Black Woman's Guide to Menopause. and so we're airing that
Hey, it
we're
just
airing
should be
that
women.
show as well.
It should
So
just be women only, not just. I'm just saying it's different. It is different for every woman. I think
Yep.
it's based on a lot of DNA. If there was some DNA research, but I never hear the same story for anyone from any one woman. But I do hear similarities.
Right.
It seems like, genetically, sometimes you might fall into genetic play. But my doctor told me that if you're one to exercise a lot, you can change that, right? If you're
Right.
one to exercise a lot, be on a good routine, healthy food, you're less likely to be impacted. He did say you're going to miss it, but you're less likely to be impacted. So all of these things have a play in it, including your DNA and genetics. So, we'd love to have her to even talk with over coffee sometime, because that is a interesting subject. Men who have to deal with women who go through menopause, just get over it.
Does she have
Menopause for a reason.
pause the man out. Does she have a book? Does she have
Say
a
what?
book? Does she have a book on that?
I don't know that she has a book, but she is also, ironically, she's got involved in what some people might consider alternative religion. So she's actually also a Yoruba priestess in the area, and she's done a number of other really cool things here in the area. I know she's got the podcast because we're re-airing that, and she's working on a couple of projects. If she doesn't have a book, I'm knowing the Omasadi, a book will be down the line, because she's just that kind of woman that she'll probably have a book down the line about what she's gone through. And I would even say that Jess probably has a book in her as well if she hasn't put one out, because her teenage son, and that's a whole different other subject, is about to walk out the school doors, or best you can walk out the school doors when the school doors are locked down and none of them are graduating in the more traditional sense. But he's off to college in the fall, and then she'll be an empty nester, because she had one teenage son that she grew close to. He was involved in athletics. I believe he was over there in the Raleigh area. I believe he was with one of the schools there as a I want to say he was in the football player and everything. So he's off to college, and I think he might even have. I know she's got an athletic background, so he may even be going up in that field in college. If not, he'll probably do the whole walk-on thing. But definitely, both of those are fascinating folks. So we created that mini network. And one of the things that y'all will be interested in is, because of StreamYard and Zoom and stuff like that, we were for a while there with the podcast, and we were pretty much locked into the 7 to 9 time. I mean, there were some other times that we were on, but it worked out for our schedule, my schedule, because of what I do at my Cultural Arts Center, Hayti Heritage Center, and some other things that are going on. We were locked into that 7 to 9 slot. It worked for Dean. Dean is involved in prison administration in New Jersey. So it worked out for us, and was a comfortable time for both of us. But because of the world that we live in, and there are some amazing guests that aren't necessarily here. I mean, like Los Angeles, they can work with us because that's 4 to 6 their time. But my guest that I had on is a special guest, because we did a special episode in Dubai. That's a whole different time zone. So that being said, I did a special interview with Ron Thomas and a special interview with the young lady that won an award as a educator from London. But those were in 2 different time zones. So I scheduled the call with them so that they could join the call. We could record it on Zoom. I think I recorded one of them, the one with Stephen Kaplan, and his was more just a schedule conflict. I mean, he's in the same time zone as I am. He's on the East Coast, but he teaches, and the teacher was at the same time as our show. So that being said, it opened up some more opportunities, this wonderful things that we've got going on in social media, that I could get on my computer, my laptop, do like y'all are doing here with me, doing an interview, download it, and then put it on the air. So that being said, this is the first week we did that, and this week we've had one special episode, and we've got 2 more to go. So Stephen Kaplan, who is a photographer and is doing this Spin It social thing on Facebook, I had him on, and he's interviewed a number of great photographers around the country, including Renita Roy, who's in India. And then we also had Ron Thomas, who I interviewed out of Dubai, and he's a human relations consultant, and his show will air this Thursday at 7 p.m. And then the young lady out of London, who is an educator, and was talking about some of the similarities between our education system in the UK and the US and just around the world, and some of the differences. And she'll be airing on this coming Friday at 7. And I think I have an interview scheduled with Renita for next week out of India. So like I said, it's opened up the kind of media aspect that we didn't always have because of what's going on with social media and the powers of the internet. So that's been really fascinating, being able to grab some of these folks and talk to them and work around their schedule.
All right, we should actually share your podcast on. You can do that with the share screen feature below there. This way, everybody will know what your podcast is. Yeah,
cool.
Right below.
You can use share screen, and you can share with us a clip of your podcast.
Yeah,
I can do that.
Right.
Let me see if I can. I'll get the share
We have
screen
the technology. We have the technology.
Actually, Nick and we came together and we started this means of doing TV interviews from home. We were the first to come out with this called Pod TV. Everybody knows we were the first to come out with it. In fact, one of our TV shows that just started, he'll even start up. He goes, I came to this because of Pod TV. These guys came out with this over a year ago. It took us a while to get it going because technology had to kind of catch up with our brains of what we wanted it to do, but it was there and it happened. And
our first interview
I keep forgetting our story, Nick, until I talk to him, and he tells it every week on his show. Pod TV is giving us, thanks to Kim and Nick, thanks to IBM TV. And I'm like, I forgot we did come up with Pod TV, didn't we? Yeah,
it was with Shambhu Prokral, who is the head of Biz TV in Nepal. That was our first interview was out of Nepal, believe it or not.
Right.
So
we did our first Pod TV interview. Yeah.
Oh, we're sharing a screen, but it looks like we're sharing us.
Oh, and that happens.
Well, hold on. I'm getting ready to get to this station. Hold on. I'm trying to get to that.
So just before
there we go. Okay, right. Let's talk about what you do here.
Mark, before you get excited, do me a favor. Did you click the button that says audio at the bottom?
Hold on 1 second. Let me double check.
Now what you're going to have to do is, I would just go ahead and stop the share, restart
the share,
restart the share. I'm getting good at this. Restart the share.
Restart the share.
And it's going to tell you to go into an application. You're going to go there. And at the very bottom in the little left-hand corner is a little bitty box that says audio.
Okay. It says screen sharing tips. Let me go to that. Yes, I did allow.
Okay. So I just want to make sure. Otherwise, we see it and don't hear it. So, Lynn.
Well, let's see if this actually works. I did not see the audio part, but it said entire screen, so I'm going to allow that too. Let's see if this actually works.
Let's see if it works.
We love it when technology comes together. Let's go take a look.
We'll see if it actually comes together. This is going to be.
Did you do this? Is Nick directing? Wow.
I'm not doing anything. I can.
It's got to be Ed Kid.
I'm pressing buttons. Wait, there's something there.
I'm going to go to the dashboard. That makes more sense.
Okay. All right. Dashboard. Oh, so he's on his website right now.
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes.
I love that audience geography.
Yes. Shows all of that and everything.
There we go. Wow, that's pretty good. You got demographics and everything.
We have the whole 9 yards. The demographics.
Hey, look at that, Antip. Look at that. He's got demographics and everything.
Ours is the whole world.
Well,
there's no way we could fit it on one screen. That we would have to be spinning constantly.
Well, that could be interesting. Y'all could do that on a regular basis.
The podcasters live in a world unto themselves. You do know that. They have their own language, their own stuff. They're, live in their own world. Conversation around COVID-19. Boy, that's dominated what we've been doing.
Well, I think it's dominated everybody.
Yeah. Oh, so we're going to be able to listen to this? Are you going to be able to press the button?
That's the idea.
Okay. I always like it when you can press a button and things happen. It's got to be good. And you get to listen to the story. Say something.
I hoping the audio got clicked. Sometimes it's hard to see it.
I'm not sure if it's rolling or not. Oh, there we go. The infinite loop.
Yep.
That's when I tried to share the screen.